Hi, I'm Dan Stair of Daniel's Training Services, and I provide training and consulting services for the management of waste and also for the transportation of hazardous materials. This video is an explanation of EPA's temporary policy that allows hazardous waste generators, some of them, to exceed temporarily their on-site accumulation volume limits under the COVID-19 public health emergency. So let's get right into that. Okay, a couple of disclaimers and things first. Of course, this video is summarizing some complex regulations. I've written an article on this subject. You'll see a link to it in the description, so make sure you go there. If you watch this video and you're like, well, hey, that applies to me, well, then by all means, go to that link, read my article. I've got more information there. I have links to EPA's temporary policies. You can read it for yourself, okay? I have links to how you can determine if your state has an authorized hazardous waste program, because that's relevant here as well, and other useful information. So go to that article in the description if you need more information, all right? Also, keep in mind that the regulations change in general terms, but also especially now. So in the current COVID-19 public health emergency, the regulations are changing very quickly. And not just the regulations really so much, but policies like this. EPA comes out with a new policy that relaxes the regulations here and has an enforcement discretion there and things like that. So this information is current as of April 28th, 2020. We are pretty much smack dab in the middle, or maybe towards the end, we're not sure, of the public health emergency due to COVID-19. All right, so that may change, so keep that in mind. Again, all this information in this video is based on a federal USEPA temporary policy, an enforcement discretion, and it's all due to the COVID-19 pandemic, okay? States, a state with its own authorized hazardous waste program may choose to be more strict. They may not adopt, they may not follow this federal kind of relaxing of the regs a little bit. So you have to check with your state. Now, states are being encouraged by EPA to follow this federal policy. I think most will, but some may not. So you really have to check with your state to be sure on this one. But look at this video first, read the article, and then if you need to, dig into your state, and I'll show you how you can do that. Okay, and of course, I've got a link to, or I've got my RCRA disclaimer video up here. You can check that out if you're interested. That's just sort of my general, hey, do your research kind of thing. Okay, so let's talk about the scope and applicability of this here. Again, all of this information is based on a US EPA temporary policy that allows for an enforcement discretion. It means basically they're choosing not to enforce their own regs, right? They're not changing the regulations. They're just saying, for the purposes of this particular public health emergency, we are not going to enforce these particular regulations, all right? It is temporary. It was announced on March 26th of 2020. It was made retroactive to March 13th of 2020, and it is good until, we don't know, because US EPA has not announced an end date to this temporary policy. What they have said, though, or what they've written, is that they will post a notification prior to its termination at least 7 days before. So if you're going to follow this temporary policy here, I highly encourage you to bookmark the EPA site, and I have a link to it, and stay tuned. Check it every morning, because they might say, hey, you know what? We think the pandemic is over. We're going to end this temporary policy in 7 days, and then you've got to make some quick arrangements, all right? So keep that in mind. Now, and of course, states may choose to end this policy earlier. Let's say a state chooses to follow this policy but maybe they open up sooner. They may choose to go back to the more strict enforcement of these regulations. So again, a lot of it's up to your state, all right? Okay, now a couple things. You may be aware that under federal regulations, there are 3 hazardous waste generator categories. There's the large quantity generator, the small quantity generator, and the very small quantity generator. And they have different on-site accumulation time limits. They also have an on-site accumulation volume limit. Some of them do. So let's talk about that. The large quantity generator has no on-site accumulation volume limit. They can accumulate on-site as much as they want, okay? Small quantity generator is limited to no more than 6,000 kilograms. That's 13,200 pounds of hazardous waste on-site at one time. That's important, okay? Small quantity generators have an on-site accumulation volume or quantity limit of 13,200 pounds, 6,000 kilograms. A very small quantity generator is limited to no more than 1,000 kilograms, about 2,200 pounds of hazardous waste on site at one time. Those 2 generator categories, very small and small, are not to exceed those quantity limits accumulated on site at one time. But what if they do because of the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, that's where EPA's temporary policy comes in, and they say that during the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, you may exceed those on-site accumulation volume limits. Let me just read it here right from the policy. The EPA will treat very small quantity generators and small quantity generators as retaining that status, even if the amount of hazardous waste stored on site exceeds a regulatory volume threshold due to the generator's inability to arrange for shipping of hazardous waste off-site due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, you got to be clear on the language there. It's not just saying let the waste pile up. It's saying that if you can't make arrangements off-site because of the COVID-19 pandemic, then you get this enforcement discretion. There are some general conditions, you should make every effort to comply with the regulations, and if compliance is not practical, you should minimize the effects and the duration of the non-compliance and return to compliance as soon as you can, and keep records and document the whole thing so you can back it up later, all right? Also, keep in mind, this is not an excuse to pollute, okay? The EPA has, because of the current public health emergency, relaxed some of its routine and day-to-day maintenance type things, like these time limits, but pollution, damage to the environment, harm to people, you're going to get in trouble for that. They're not going to allow that. You're not going to get a discretion for that at all right? So you still have to do everything safely, still keep up on your labeling and dating, things like that, of the containers, and all those other regulations apply, okay? Keep them closed, keep them from contaminating the environment. And also, now this is talking about the on-site accumulation volume or quantity limits. What about the on-site accumulation time limits? Well, check out this video on that one, because there is also an enforcement discretion for that, all right? So I'll have a video description of that one. Okay, so again, that's it. Please, if you're interested in this, read the article, dig deeper into it, all right? I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I put out content like this whenever I can. So if you're interested in this information, I'm sure you'll be interested in the other things that I post videos on. And again, always feel free to contact me with any questions you may have. Please be safe, and let's all get through this, and we'll move on and get back to business again. Thank you very much.